Hello there. Welcome back to Jennie Designs with Paper. Thank you so much for stopping by my channel today. I want to make 4 cards with my Cricut today, so get comfy and let's get crafty. The first thing I'm going to do is put a shape on my canvas that is the size of a card base. So I will unlock the dimensions on this square and make it 5¼ inches wide by 4 inches tall. 3 of the 4 cards I'm making today are landscape cards. So I'm going to start with those. I am going to change the color of this rectangle just a bit so that it's a little bit less right in your face. I'm going to click the Images button, and I've typed in the word cooler here, and I've selected Purchase, and I want to add this to the desktop. Now there are some pieces here I don't want, so I'm going to ungroup it and pull things apart just a little bit. I don't think I want that white circle background. And in fact, I'm not going to use the red circle either. But the red circle is part of the front side of that cooler. So I needed to do a little bit of slicing. I needed to slice that pink and that red together so I can delete them. So even though I cannot really delete that circle around the side of that cooler, it's fine. If I decide I don't want to use it, I just won't. Not a big deal. So the right side of this cooler is a slightly different colored red. I'm just going to change it so they're the same color because I don't care about that necessarily. And I'm going to regroup these images together. I'm going to make sure that they're all aligned properly and group them back together so I can make sure that they are the size I want on my card front. So I'm going to drag this over on top of that card front, and I really am going to ignore that circle because I really just don't plan to use it. I want to add some text. I'm going to have my Cricut cut some text out, so I'm going to go over to the left side and click the text button. And before I start typing, I'm going to come over here to the font drop down, and I'm going to change it to system fonts because I have a lot of extra fonts on my computer. And I'm just going to scroll down until I find one that I want for this card. I want a nice thick font, nothing too thin or scripty. These cards are mostly masculine cards. I have a lot of man birthday cards that I need to mail this month. The phrase I want to type is "You're the coolest." Haha, dad joke, really? Total dad joke. But instead of having it be in a straight line, I'm going to have it be a stacked sentiment. And so I'm going to just click in between those words and hit enter and just make those stacked. And then I'm going to size it properly for the card front. I just needed to pull that card base down just a little bit so I could get it sized on there. It was kind of shoved off in the corner. I'm going to drag that down just a little and then pull my cooler in there to make sure that it will fit. And if I can wedge this cooler right there kind of in the center of the right, those words will fit right around it. So now we're on to the next card, which is also a text-based card. I'm going to scroll down again and find another one of my computer fonts. Again, I want a nice thick font, but this one I want to have more square edges. And I'm just going to change that to HB2U, happy birthday to you. And I'm going to shrink that down to be the size of a card front. So about 5¼ inches wide, maybe just under 5¼ inches wide. And once I have that size, I am going to change that from gray to black. Not that it really matters. Also the same thing with the "You're the coolest" words, just so that they are all the text cuts at the same time. The next card I'm going to create, I'm going to use this equal sign that is in the shapes category. I'm just going to stretch that out super big right now. And I'm going to change it to green because I love green. And then I'm going to add a text box. And I'm again going to go in and scroll through and find a font text. I want one that is, again, thick and easy to cut, but maybe something that's a little bit more whimsical this time, just because. So I'm going to choose this one that's a little bit round and fat and puffy. I am going to I'm going to double click on the text box there and type the word birthday. And once I have the word birthday typed, I'm going to drag it up in between that equal sign, and I'm going to unlock the proportions on top and make it down to where it fits. It's the same length as that equal sign, so that the word birthday will fit right there into equal. And then I use the align tools up top to make sure that they are center aligned, so that the word birthday, the text box, is right in between that equal sign. And once I have that done, I'm going to go down to I'm going to select both the equal sign and the text box, and I'm going to go down to the tool bottom, or the tool strip on the left, or right, sorry, and click weld, and that will make this one piece. And then I need to make this the size of my card. Now, this is the card I want to create a portrait style card. So I'm going to change the gray card shape I've been using for measurements just to make sure the layout looks nice. I'm going to change that to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I want this to be the actual size of the card. And then I'm going to change the shape of this birthday cutout. Same thing, I'm going to unlock the proportions and just type in with my keypad the number size I want to be up there. My plan is to put some pattern paper along the top and bottom of that in order to kind of decorate that big, because now it's huge, right? To kind of decorate that and have it look cool. So I'm just making sure that it's going to fit the way that I want. I'm kind of adjusting some of the measurements, and I like how that looks. So now we're going to move on to card number 4, which I'm going to go back into the images, and I'm going to type the word car. I've still clicked purchased, and I want to find a car that is just the shadow image, just a silhouette of a car. And there's this one right here. It's an old car. It works for what I want. Then I'm going to type the word man, and same thing. I want to look for an image of a man that is silhouetted. The one I chose is not just a silhouette, but it has a background layer that I can use as a silhouette, and it's this groom right here. So I'm going to add those images to my canvas, and then I need to do a little bit of rearranging here. So the first thing I need to do is drag that car down, and I'm going to change the color of it first, because right now it has no color. And then I'm going to ungroup all of the, well, first I'm going to turn on the outline of this groom. And then I'm going to select him again and ungroup him and pull everything apart. Once you click ungroup, you have to click on your canvas again so that it will pull everything apart. So now I'm taking off all of the pieces, so all I have is that silhouette. I can move my background out of the way, group those all together, and delete, and they're all gone. Now I want to pull my, so you got a little pop-up window on my computer there. I'm going to pull my card front back in and change it back to a landscape style card, which means it is 4 inches tall by 5 1/4 inches wide. And I'm going to size the car to fit on the front of this card panel. Then I'm going to bring this man in and stand it in front of the car and size it down so it's a little bit proportionate. It's probably kind of a little off proportion, to be honest, but then I'm going to select them all and weld them together so they are one piece. And then it's time to double check that it fits on my card front, that I don't need to resize it again. And it's time to put them all on, get them ready to cut. So in order to not have to, well, okay, let me talk you through this first. Select the mat, and then in order to not have to change the paper on my mat a whole bunch of times, what I'm going to do is move the one thing that cuts out of white paper over here to the top right corner, because all of the black things are going to cut on the top left corner. And then I can drag the green one down to the bottom left corner and the red one to the bottom right corner. And even though I will still have to unload and reload my mat every time, I can put all the paper on at once, and it saves me just a little bit of time. Now, I did intend to show you how I did that, but I forgot to turn the camera on. So now we're just into the put it all together phase. I'm going to start with this birthday cutout card, and I have a piece of black cardstock, a white card base. I have a Simon Says stamp, happy birthday stamp set, and I have a piece of yellow and green striped pattern paper. I'm going to score my card base in the middle at 5.5 to create that top folding US A2 size card. This is a 110-pound heavyweight cardstock. So instead of a bone folder, I'm using a stylus to get a nice crease in there. And even then, sometimes it seems like it doesn't score it quite enough, and I have to really burnish that fold line down. Okay, so this is how this cutout is going to look, and I really like it. I want to cut the black cardstock to fit along the green top and bottom, and then I want to cut the pattern paper down to fit it, and I did that all off camera because this is already kind of a long video. So the black pieces are exactly the right width. The pattern paper is a little bit not. That's okay. I'm going to put double-sided adhesive on both sides of those pattern paper. And I don't want a margin on the left and right hand side. I want the pattern paper to go completely across it. So instead of trying to line it up in the corners, I'm just going to make sure that the black piece is lined up on my grid mat and put the pattern paper down right in the middle. And even if it's not exactly in the middle, I'm going to not care. I'm going to choose to not care. Same thing on the second piece. I kept having some issues with my tape runner here. I had to keep stopping and I don't know, it was being weird. I have some off-brand ATG refills in my ATG right now, and while I appreciate that they are much less expensive, sometimes they don't glide quite as smooth. So it did take me a minute to get this one lined up because things. Once I get the pattern paper onto the black cardstock, I am going to pull out a pair of scissors and just trim off the ends trim off all 4 ends so that I can start putting things together. Okay, so I've trimmed that all down and I'm going to adhere it, and it will not completely cover up that green that we cut out of the Cricut, which I like, but it is time to put it all together. So I'm going to start with putting some double-sided adhesive on the back of the birthday cutout. I'm just using my ATG, lots of adhesive in this thing. And I'm just putting some right along the top and the bottom. I don't think I need to worry about the backs of the letters because I'm going to put the happy sentiment kind of across the top of them. So they will be not likely to be caught on the envelope or something like that. So once I have that centered, or at least visually centered, I am going to go ahead, and you'll notice that these go all the way across the card front. They don't stop at the edge of the green panel, which is what I wanted. I wanted this to be, that's the look I was going for. That was on purpose. Sometimes my measurements become an accidental thing that happens, but this time it was on purpose. I wanted that pattern paper with the black mat behind it to go all the way from one side of the card base to the other. It just makes that birthday sentiment kind of jump out just a little bit. At least in my brain it does. The next thing, and I am making sure that those pattern paper, the diagonal lines are going in the same direction. They're not lined up exactly, but they're going in the same direction. So the next thing I need to do is stamp the happy word. I have a piece of that same black cardstock. I've put it into my MISTI, and I will be using the Scripty stamp in this happy birthday or happy everything stamp set. Sorry, words are hard. I feel like because this is a long video, I have to talk fast, I think. So anyway, I'm going to put the stamp in my MISTI. I will prepare the cardstock with the Rabbit Hole Designs Cottontail powder tool. It's an anti-static powder tool because I'm going to heat emboss the happy sentiment onto this cardstock. I will be stamping it with Hero Arts Unicorn white pigment ink. I'm going to stamp it twice. I did not get a very good stamping the first time, and I think that might be because my MISTI lid isn't right flat on my desk. It's, and so I didn't get enough ink on the stamp. So I will go ahead and stamp that twice so that I can get a nice clear impression before I put my white embossing powder over the top. One thing I noticed about my embossing powder this time is that it's a little bit yellowed. It's not quite as bright white as it used to be. So I think it might be time to replace it. I have had that tub of white embossing powder for a really long time. And it's a couple of different brands mixed together, to be honest. I think I've got some, there's lots in there. but it's not as white as it used to be on that black cardstock. So I think it might be time to get some new white embossing powder. I am going to go ahead and heat set that with my heat tool, get that embossing powder all nice and melted. And when I have that melted, I'm going to trim down that happy strip. Totally going to do that off camera. And then I'm going to wipe the rest of that anti-static powder off the front of the cardstock so that it looks black instead of gray. Sometimes you have to do that with like a damp baby wipe as well. And I did do that off camera later, because on the dark cardstock, that anti-static powder just kind of hangs around. Now I want to stick the word happy right there on the edge of the left edge of the birthday word, and I'm going to pop it up with some foam tape. So I have a little piece of this 3M foam tape that I've cut in half widthwise, and I'm just going to put that on the back of this word strip and line it up where I want it on the front of my card. And then this card will be just about complete. So because it is a white card base, I don't need to put anything on the inside. Although sometimes I would still put like a green cardstock mat in there and then put some white cardstock on top of it. But I don't think it needs it in this case. It's not very front heavy, so it will be okay. And there is card number 1. The next card we're going to put together is this car and boy image. And I have a piece of pattern paper from this Rose, was it Paper Rose Dad's Shed pattern paper pack. And I have kind of a rust colored card base. This is going to be a landscape card. So I will be scoring the card base at 4 1/4. This is a more like an 80-pound or 100-pound cardstock. So I'm just going to use my bone folder again. I'm going to fold it in half, try and line up those corners. I pull it toward me and push it against my chest because I only have 2 hands and I needed a third right there. That's why it flips off camera for a minute there. I'm going to trim this pattern paper down. I want it to be slightly, I want it to have a slight border. So I have a piece of black cardstock here that I'm going to trim down to 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. So there's just a tiny margin between the black cardstock and the card base. And then I can cut my pattern paper down to 4 by 5 1/4. So standard card mat sizes. And this kind of has paper rose pattern paper is kind of a glossy paper. It feels a little bit like it's not laminated like a laminator, but it does feel like it has a coating to it. So I am going to cut that down. I'm choosing which sides I want to keep because I want to keep a little bit of that yellow and a little bit of that rust color toward the bottom of my piece of paper. So I am going to adhere my papers together. And this is what it's going to look like. Just the smallest mat. I'm going to put the car right here on the front. And then this same pattern paper stack had a sentiment strip piece. So I'm going to add that happy birthday sentiment there. To put the, so this card base didn't fold exactly straight. I was just kind of pointing that out. So I just flip it inside out and realign it. That's how I fix that. If it's not super thick cardstock, that's an easy fix. If it's a super thick cardstock, I just trim down that edge that's hanging over. So it's just slightly less than, It's okay. It's all good. This is paper crafting. We are going with the flow. First thing I'm going to do is adhere my black mat to my card front. I'm putting some double-sided adhesive on the top and the bottom. I don't feel like this cardstock is heavy. The black cardstock is a layering weight. I think it's a 60-pound cardstock. So I'm just making sure that it's lined up okay. I wanted to make sure that it was the same margin on all 3 sides, or all 4 sides. 4 sides, not 3. I do no geometry. Okay, and then I'm going to put the pattern paper on it. You can see the back side of this is really cute. It has a whole bunch of tools, and I almost used that side, but it was a little too busy for our cutout. And my double-sided adhesive like this roll is just about done. I think that's why it's giving me such a headache. But I'm going to put this down in the kind of center it on that black mat, and there's just the tiniest frame. I want to add the car and the young man onto foam tape. Now, because there's a lot of fiddly pieces, like little skinny narrow pieces, I'm obviously not going to get foam tape everywhere. I could have cut this out 3 or 4 times to give me the same kind of dimension that you get from adding foam tape, but I didn't think about that until I was cutting little tiny pieces of foam tape to go on the back of this die cut image. So, or this cutout image. So I just cut a whole bunch of pieces of foam tape, and I did not make you watch that because nobody wants to see that. I don't think. I'm going to grab it with my reverse clamp tweezers here just so I can get my fingers out of the way. And it takes up nearly the entire card front, which was the point. And then I'm going to put the sentiment on, but I feel like that needs a black mat as well. So I'm going to pull another piece of that black cardstock in, put some double-sided adhesive on the back. I will go ahead and trim that up off camera because as far as close zoomed in as I am so that you can see the card process, sometimes my camera does not focus very well on my paper trimmers, so I edit a lot of that out. So I'm just going to put a tiny border along the bottom, tiny border along the top, tiny border along the sides, and then I will adhere it to the front of the card with some adhesive, and then I will put a white panel, that's the word I'm looking for, a white panel into the inside of the card because this is a colored card base. And this is card number 2, right? Yes, card number 2. It took me a minute to remember where we were. Oh, y'all, it's been a day. Okay, card number 2 is finished. We're working on this HB2U card, which should have been the easiest because it's pattern paper and letters. However, I messed up the measurements and it was extra. This is not the pattern paper I end up using, but I use another one the same color out of that pattern paper pad. So, first thing we're going to do is score this card base. It's another landscape card. I'm using my bone folder, even though I should have used my stylus because this is that thick cardstock. I'm going to, the reason I started with scoring my card base is because my intention was to just cut that pattern paper down and put it right on top, but I didn't like it. It looked unfinished. So again, I found a piece of black cardstock and did some other things. But the first thing I'm going to do is put my plan was to put the letters on top of the pattern paper on the cardstock and call it good, or the card base and call it good. But it looked a little undone. There was just, I don't know, I didn't like it. So I'm going to line up these letters on my grid mat, and then I'm going to pick them up with a piece of Post-it tape. So I've tore off my piece of Post-it tape. I'm going to zoom through this because it takes a hot minute to get this all done. And I still didn't get them straight, y'all. I still did not get them straight. So I picked them up with my tweezers. I'm going to add some glue to the back of them, and I'm putting them on this piece of white cardstock. And then I'm going to trim that white cardstock down so it's just a little bit of a layer. It just felt like that the letters right on top of the pattern paper were unfinished, maybe is a good word. But I got the H and the B down. I got the 2 on there, and the U is like hanging below the piece of cardstock. I'm like, how did I do that? So I pulled it up to try and rearrange it, and then my H was crooked and my 2 was crooked, but my H was already glued all the way down. So it just was. I'm going to go ahead and trim this down just right up there, right as close to the top of those letters as I can get. And then we're going to start putting the card together. So here is that piece already all trimmed down. I almost put it on a black mat as well, but I decided not to. I did grab some black cardstock and create a black mat for my pattern paper. I'm just going to adhere them together real quick with my double-sided adhesive. Oh, and at this point I have already had to put a new roll of adhesive in my ATG. I mean, it was just a process today. It was just a process. But I love it when I can sit down and create multiple cards at one time, especially because I send a lot of birthday cards. I am one of 10 children. My husband is one of 7 children. Everybody is married and or has children. Some of the grandkids are married. I have 2 children with significant others. Well, I have 3 children with significant others, and I have a grandbaby. I mean, I send a lot of cards. I send probably almost as many birthday cards as I send Christmas cards. So this is how I want the card layout to look. I know that the top margin is wider than the bottom margin, and I did that at the last minute because I still felt like the pattern paper was just not enough. So I had a plan. I am going to grab another piece of pattern paper from the stack that has a few, it's just a leftover piece, and it has a whole bunch of colors in it, and I've cut them into 1/2-inch strips, and I'm going to cut them down into varying lengths of paper, and I'm going to make candles out of them. But I needed to pull that sentiment up just a little bit on the top so I could slide those candles underneath the sentiment. Otherwise, it was going to look weird. Or, maybe it wouldn't look weird, but in my brain, it was going to look weird. So I am going to zoom through the adding of the candles. I intentionally did not measure the length of the candles because I wanted them all to be slightly different. I tried not to have too many of the stripes on the pattern paper in the same place. I didn't succeed very well. I also tried to have odd numbered candles, but I left too much space in between. So whatever it is, what it is, there's 6. And I have this old punch from Stampin' Up. It's actually a Christmas light bulb, but it makes the perfect flames for candles. So I have stamped that out of a scrap of yellow cardstock, and I am adhering it to the front of the tops of my candles. And you can see on a couple of these tall candles where the flame sticks over that pattern paper. And that is why I chose to scoot it down and leave that margin a little taller. And then because you have to, I added some Wink of Stella glitter to the flames on the candles. And this is the end of card number 3. Wink of Stella is perfect amount of glitter. That's all I'm going to say. Pattern paper for card number 4 is this Echo Park. It's called Let's Go Anywhere. It's kind of a camping travel themed paper pad. Another horizontal or landscape card. Card base is made out of that thick cardstock again. I'm really trying to make sure I get those corners lined up. I needed to use my stylus instead of the bone folder. That's the word I'm looking for, bone folder. Okay, once I have that card base put together, I'm going to trim down this pattern paper. I went back and forth with needing a mat behind this one as well. It's always that. It's hard to tell if the mat is going to be overload or just finish it off, right? It's kind of hard to tell. But I opted to just cut this down and then let's see how it looks. I pulled the card base out, didn't like it, so I pulled the black cardstock out, and I did go ahead and put that mat. Again, it's just a very thin mat. It's like 1/8 of an inch between each of the 3 layers. But this is another one of those times when it just adds that finishing touch. Sometimes I feel like, especially when I first started card making, I added so many layers of cardstock to the front of the card that the back of the card could not even hold it together. So that's why I said sometimes it's a little bit over top, and sometimes it's like a fine line between over the top and just the right touch. Using a heavyweight cardstock for the card base helps prevent that. So I'm just going to go ahead and adhere this layer, and then I have to decide how to put it all together. So if you remember when I was laying it out on my Cricut canvas, my plan was to put the cooler in kind of the center of the right-hand side of the paper. I did not remember that. Just giving you advance warning now. I did not remember that. So I went ahead and put the layers of pattern paper and mat on my card base, and I grabbed the pieces of that cooler and I started putting them together right down there in that bottom right-hand corner. If you remember, the words, the text I cut, fit right snugly in if that's in the right place. Otherwise, they're too big. Well, I had to get creative then. So I'm thinking, do I want the circle? I'm still debating. And even though I know it's not going to fit with the words, I'm still debating. I'm like, no, you don't need the circle. You don't need the circle. I'm telling myself as I'm looking at it, no, you don't need the circle. And then I put the cooler right down there in the bottom again. Sometimes there's just not words. Sometimes there are just not words for the way that my brain works when I am creating things. And that's okay. It's supposed to be relaxing. And like I called my craft room my therapy room. Sometimes I have to just go in there and tell my kids, there's leftovers in the fridge, go eat. I need to go be in my office because it really does relieve tension for me, even when I do dumb things like this that I didn't plan on doing. Not that it's dumb because it turned out super cute anyway, but anyways, now that we have this cooler nearly assembled, I just have to remember which way to put that piece on. Slide it right in there. I don't really want the white to show. I think on the actual image it did a little bit, but I'm going to slide it all the way over to that left-hand side so you don't really see that white background because I don't want it to show. And it's my card, so I can make it that way. And then the words. So I started with putting the words right on the plaid pattern paper, but they didn't show up. So I went ahead and put this Tim Holtz grip stuff. What's it called? The grip paper down, and used a T-square and just put the words on this piece of white cardstock. We're going to zoom through that at like 8 times normal speed or something because that took a minute, y'all. I forgot to leave a little bit of space for the apostrophe. So that got a little bit, I'm like, oh yeah, whoops. So it's hanging out the top kind of a little bit high. Once I had the word your down, I used the middle letter of each of the other 2 words to kind of make sure they were centered a little bit. I don't know if it's perfect, but here I am on my fingers counting the middle letter of the word coolest. And this is a total dad joke kind of card. You're the coolest with a cooler. And you can see that my letters are getting a little uphill. They're not staying on that straight slope. Even with a ruler. And then once I had this, all the letters put down, I thought I could use like a die, I have a deckled edge die set from Spellbinders. That did not work. My wonky stitch rectangles die didn't work. So I am just going to fussy cut around this word block, kind of making it wonky, not straight, rounding it out. I'm just giving it, and by the skin of my teeth, it fits. But I think it's so cute. So I am going to go ahead and just adhere that with the glue because it's there. Because it's right there to the side of me. And I just think that turned out cute. Now, would I have liked it if it had turned out the way I wanted to? Of course. But here are the 4 cards we made today using cutouts from the Cricut machine. These are really simple cutouts. I know that with die cutting machines like the Cricut, you can really get into some very dimensional, very extravagant cutouts. But when I'm making cards in like multiple cards at one time, I like being able to just make quick cutouts to make quick cards. Now I say quick cards, but this took me like over an hour to put all 4 of them to, get it created, get them cut out, get them all 4 put together, but they're still quick cards. So I hope you enjoyed the video today. I have a couple of other videos here that I think you might like as well. I've also added a subscribe button. If you have not yet subscribed to my channel, I would love it if you did. Give me a thumbs up, let YouTube know you like the video. Leave me a comment down below. And have a really fabulous day.